Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. This is the webinar about the Blurred Borders Queensland Toolkit, which is a set of resources you can use with your clients and the community to talk about the law. First things first, I'm going to do an acknowledgement of country. So Legal Aid Queensland acknowledges and respects the First Nations custodians of the land where all of our offices stand and where we work from to help disadvantaged Queenslanders uphold their legal rights in our justice system. We pay respect to their elders, law, customs and creation spirits. We recognise that these lands have always been places of ceremony, teaching, research and learning, and we acknowledge the important role that First Nations people play in our community and in improving our justice system. I'd like to acknowledge any First Nations people joining us today. We're joining you from Yagara and Turrbal country in Brisbane, and I acknowledge our First Nations staff members on the panel today. So I'll run through who our presenters are joining us today. So it's myself, Catherine Gorder. I'm the Community Legal Education and Engagement Coordinator here at Legal Aid Queensland. To my left, I have Edwina Yasso. She is the Community Legal Education and Engagement Officer, also in the CLE team, and has been one of our main Blurred Borders trainers. We've also got Neil Filewood, the Youth Court Coordinator from our Townsville office, joining us online. Thank you, Neil, for being available. And lastly, we have Courtney Mobbs down the end here, who's a child protection lawyer here at Legal Aid Queensland. So a bit of housekeeping to run through first, just to remind you the webinar is being recorded and the recording of this will be published on our YouTube channel a couple of days after this webinar, so feel free to access it there. We'll also send you a link to that after the session's finished. For any technical help, please contact the GoToWebinar customer support team. They can help you with any audio or AV issues. So today's webinar is a 1-hour webinar. It'll include about 40 minutes of presentation time. There'll be time for questions at the end too. So please, I encourage you throughout the webinar, if you have a question for anyone on our panel, please type it in the question box on your screen and we'll look at those in the Q&A section at the end. There's a couple of handouts for you that you can download as well. There's a copy of the slides from today's presentation, as well as a copy of our Blurred Borders brochure, in case you'd like to send that on to anyone in your team if they're interested to learn more about the Blurred Borders toolkits. So we might kick off with our first poll. This is an opportunity for you to answer some questions. So our first poll today is, what region do you work in? And I'm just going to launch that for you now. I'll give you about 20 seconds to pop your answer in. So the options are South East Queensland, Far North Queensland, Regional Queensland or outside of Queensland. So I'll give you another 10 seconds to answer that one. Okay, a couple more seconds. And I'll close that one and share the results with you all. So more than 75% are joining us from South East Queensland today. We've also got a few from Far North Queensland, that's great, and a few from regional and outside of Queensland. So welcome everybody, that's great. We've got another poll for you. This one is, what is your role? So I'll just load that one for you now. And the options are, you're a support or community worker, financial counsellor, health or education worker, social worker, lawyer or other. So I'll just give you a few more seconds to enter your answers for this one. Couple more seconds. Right, I'll close that and share that with you all. So today we've got quite a few lawyers joining us, 36%. We've also got quite a few support and community workers, social workers and a large group of other. So thank you. We recognise that Blurred Borders is applicable to so many professions, so it's great to have a diverse audience joining us today. I'll just click through. We've got one more poll for you. I'll just bring that one up. And that is, rate your level of knowledge about the Blurred Borders Queensland resources. So if you've heard about the kit before, great. Or do you have no knowledge, limited knowledge, or hopefully good knowledge? I'll give you 10 more seconds to fill this one in. couple more seconds. I'll close that off and share. So most people joining us have no knowledge or limited knowledge, and that's great. That's really helpful for us to know where you're at with Blurred Borders and lets us frame the session towards your needs. So we'll keep moving on with our presentation. So in today's session, this is what we're going to talk through. We're going to give you an overview of the Blurred Borders Queensland journey so far. We'll talk in detail about what Blurred Borders Queensland is, what actually is in the toolkit. We'll have a look at what we've got planned for this year in terms of training and information sessions. Also going to talk through a case study to give you a practical example of how Blurred Borders can be used with clients to help explain a legal problem. We'll share some of the lessons we've learnt along the way, and we'll also refer you to some of the resources on our website, some videos, and just how you can order the kits or parts of the kits for your organisation. So the first slide, breaking down barriers in legal communication. That's really what Blurred Borders is all about. So why is it so important that we as professionals break down these barriers and communicate about legal issues really clearly to our clients?
For me, I think we should probably start with talking about the history behind Blurred Borders. We've been very lucky in Queensland that we actually had a Blurred Border project that we could utilise from the Northern Territory in Western Australia. So back in 2016, Northern Territory and Western Australia legal aid commissions were actually trying to work out how they can reduce the community legal issues within the criminal justice system, and there's agencies about the barriers of understanding the language, basically, you know, interpreting language from different community groups. But what they've worked out is it's not just navigating the language, it's also about talking about how they can break down it into plain language. And what they found as through the process is lawyers love to draw pictures to explain a process. Is that right, Courtney? Yes.
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 Right.
And so what they found is, well, how can we have a structure or picture that actually tells that same story and has continuity and consistency through it? So while they were looking at reducing, you know, stuff, they also realised the product itself could be a really great group-based communication or legal education activities to help people break down those legal problems and be able to consult. So yeah, we were very lucky for Northern Territory, Western Australia legal aid commissions thinking about how to do that, breaking down those two barriers in legal communication.
Yeah, they developed the first kit, and that all came about, and the name Blurred Borders comes about from the cross-border region in Katherine and Kununurra, where people may have had a legal problem on one side of the border but might have gone home to the other side of the border, and it's just the challenges that those organisations and those clients faced in explaining the legal issues that were for, you know, two different justice systems in two different states. So that's how the name Blurred Borders came about. It was a geographical reference, and we chose to keep that name for the Queensland product just because it's quite well known in the sector, the Blurred Borders resources. So that's just a bit of background there about that. And so this slide here is a bit of a history and a timeline of the Blurred Borders project in Queensland. So Ed, if you just want to talk that through and we'll jump in.
Cool. So first off, I was back in 2022, we actually got a request to, so I've been a part of this journey since then, and it was about DJAG looking at what DJAG realised was Department of Justice Attorney General, sorry, I will not use acronyms, it's inappropriate. Department of Justice Attorney Generals was looking at how they noticed the blurred border was being used, Northern Territory, Western Australia, across Queensland, and wanted to make it, bring it into Queensland with legal context from Queensland laws, as it's very different between the three different states, especially in the criminal justice arena. So they started then. So what happened is we were really lucky. We actually got a funding to produce this in consultation with other with Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Legal Commission, Legal Aid, and also Queensland Indigenous Family Violence Legal Service. So in partnership with them, we actually looked at we employed a project officer. So we had the lovely Cecilia Byrne,
Yes.
and she was with us for the consultation phase, which was really great because she was able to review it. And being a lawyer herself, she was looking at it from a legal lens herself, but also being of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander descent. So we then developed the prototype, and from the prototype, we actually then went out and did a state consultation. So we went all across Queensland from, well, not basically mostly in our 13 office locations, but we went as far as Thursday Island, Bamaga, and out to Toowoomba, and all the way down to Southport. So we covered as much as Queensland as we can and asked people, took them through a consultation on the prototype we developed.
Yeah, so that was providing input and like, what does it look like? Are the
Yes.
pictures appropriate? Is the content on the cards appropriate? Is it plain language? Is it culturally appropriate what we've written? So we got all that feedback
Yes.
from the quite diverse groups of stakeholders,
Yeah.
and then collated all that feedback, brought it all together, and that's when we met with the linguist
Yes.
to give us advice on what pieces of feedback we should be adopting, and that's then resulted in what we have today.
Yeah, I think one of the things with the consultation was we really wanted people to understand that with the Northern Territory Western Australia project they did consultation. So we still needed, even though we were adapting it to Queensland, we still needed to consult with our communities here, because in Queensland we do have diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, whereas in the Northern Territory it is purely Aboriginal communities. So we really need to incorporate that within it. So we did go down that statewide consultation. And you're right, Catherine, the feedback was really great, and this is where a lot of the stuff we did with producing the resource and then doing the statewide training we did last year, 9 weeks of my life that I can't technically remember, and I saw 300 odd people, was a lot of fun, but it also made me aware that it was really important that we did that consultation, because it meant we asked. Now, I get a lot of questions from people when I talk about Blurred Borders, is you talk about consultation and you're in a room full of lawyers. Have you asked other people? Well, when we did consultation, our whole point of consultation was to talk to people who help service clients who have to access the legal system. So we did not just go to legal organisations, and I can tell you for a fact that I had Aboriginal health workers in the room for consultation. I had mental health workers in the room. I even had universities in the room for consultation, and then they referred over across to training also. So this has, through consultation, has had a very broad knowledge gone across everywhere, so people can see it and have their input. So, and I really like to thank those people who participated in the consultation, because without that we wouldn't have got where we are now.
Yeah, and so essentially we produced the final resources for kids, which we're going to show you on the next slide. We're deep in training now. We started our training program late last year in October.
Yes.
And Ed again travelled far and wide, delivering our first round of training to that key group of stakeholders that provided us with all that input during consultation. We're planning to hold more training again this year, but we'll talk a bit more about that further on. But while this is all happening, while we're still in rollout phase and education phase, there is actually an external evaluation happening right now, also funded by the Department of Justice and Attorney General, just to look at the quality of the resource, the quality of the training that we've been delivering. So we're really keen to see the results from that as well, and they are doing that independently and talking to people attending training and collating all that feedback quite independently. So that will also help inform future updates to this product.
Cool.
So what is Blurred Borders
Queensland? Okay, you probably, so first off, you're probably wondering why I'm leaning. I just thought I'd show you. This is a Blurred Border kit, okay?
Yeah.
Inside the kit, when you come to training, you get a variety of stuff. So you get your story cards and everything else. We'll talk to that. But everyone keeps saying, what do you mean by Blurred Borders and what is it? Well, that's what it looks like physically.
It's a set of resources to help you talk about the law to people, to clients, to communities.
So what I like to also explain to people too is this is not designed as a cultural competency training. This is actually designed just to be able to navigate the legal system in using plain language in a consistent manner. Okay, it's not just for lawyers, which is what I kind of alluded to with the consultation. We looked at people who are helping, assisting people who have to navigate the legal system, because the legal system is not easy to navigate. unless you understand the law. That is why we have lawyers and who go to training for 4 years, and to understand the nuances within law, you can get lost easily. Would you say that, Courtney?
Yes.
Yes. So this is not just for lawyers. So, and as a communication toolkit, we have 2 kits. So this one I'm holding right now is the bail and criminal process. And then we also have another one which Courtney has in front of her, which is the family violence.
Yep.
Okay. The one thing that's different about the Northern Territory and Western Australia product and Queensland is we actually have youth inside our bail and criminal process. We have incorporated the youth component inside that. So that's the difference. So really the whole point of the kit, and it's what it is like I keep saying it, and you're probably going to hear me say it all the way through this presentation. It's about using plain language and doing a storytelling, and it's not for lawyers, it's for everybody. It's a communication, it's a way of breaking down a communication to work through that legal issue.
Yeah. So it's a way to help you break down complex legal concepts to your client, explain processes step by step, with the goal that the client better understands the legal process they're involved in, understands their legal rights, understands their legal obligations, and can walk away from that appointment knowing what the responsibilities are and have participated in the process.
So as Courtney knows and has been in training with me, I go through things real quickly because I'm actually just going to show you the kits on the next slide. But yes, as it shows there, those are the 2 kits. So yeah, we can probably go to the next slide if that's all right, KG.
Yep.
So what's in the kit? Because I didn't take it out for you, this is what's in the kit. You have a user manual. Now the user manual, people go, oh, what's the use having a user manual? The user manual is really good. It has some really great resources in it, but one thing it does have is has the CLE activities. So if you want to run a CLE activity, you can actually go there, and it's got little case studies. Now the case study we're doing today is not actually in the kit, but because we designed that as part of an information session. So the user manual is really good. It's got some great information in there. The other part is the process map. Now people think, oh, why process map? Well, when you have a client that comes into you, they don't start from A and you go to B to C to D. They generally start from G or H or halfway through their journey, or in the middle of the journey, at the end or at the front. So a process map is about how you can actually go, okay, so this is where we think you are, and it's part of coming to a conversation with somebody. The story card's pretty explanatory. Story cards.
It's pictures. That's the key element.
Yes.
The key.
The element is pictures. Yes.
They're great.
Yes, and so the pictures explain it, and then you've got a wallet card and stickers. So that's what's inside a kit that you get when if you want to order or come to training.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So the cards actually come in categories, which is all about storytelling, because storytelling is about breaking it into smaller components for people. So the cards have, if it's a domestic violence card, it has a family definition card, it has conditions and orders, things that might happen, things you can do, places, people, and the healthy, no, what's it called? The healthy cards.
Healthy mind.
Healthy mind cards. I keep forgetting what they're called.
Like feelings, people and feelings.
People and feelings, that's the word.
And so it's a case of like you're building a story, like choosing cards from all the different categories to tell the story of where the client is in their legal matter and who they are and what they're feeling and what's happening and who's in the court. So bringing all those elements together to show the full picture of what's happening for them.
Yeah, so that's the cards. Now, so we're going to talk about Blurred Border 2024. So previously I showed you, and right there is the lovely Cecilia's hand that she's showing, and I'm showing you a picture of a consultation. That's a consultation picture of us in, let me have a look. That looks like it's Yarrabah. So when we're in consultation, this is the type of stuff we did, but basically in 2024, we're changing the program. So last year, if you actually came to a training session with us, we locked you in for 4 hours.
4 hours.
Now you will probably go, oh my goodness, that's a long time for training. Well, I think so too. So we actually changed it to 2 hours. But can I tell you, even though I did 4 hours worth of training, And the reason why it's so blurred to me is that I actually couldn't get people out of the room after 4 hours, because what happens is in the training, you actually start understanding how to conceptualize this program, this resource kit. Okay, so we've decided this year in 2024 just to break it into smaller bites so that you can choose and then make a decision. So the information session is what we're doing right now.
Yep.
I generally get it. Yeah, generally a brief overview, and we I generally can get it done before an hour. Would you say that, Courtney?
Yes.
How about
Usually we do.
Yeah. How about yourself, Neil? How quick did you find getting your information session done?
I think it was around 45, 50 minutes, so gets out pretty quick.
Yeah.
Just
So
a brief overview.
we give you a brief overview, and in that session you get to then ask a lot of questions, and there is a lot of questions people ask us about Blurred Borders, which is AKA why we're doing this webinar today, hopefully to answer some questions and give a broad overview. The other thing too is the training session is 2 hours now, and then refresher training, we say 1 to 2, because that's when we actually will start thinking about what do you want to know and how we can help you with putting it in your process.
Yeah, specific examples for your role, like for people who may have already done the training and like, okay, well, I've got these situations happening, how can I use the cards to explain this to a client? So we'll workshop that with someone and tailor something for them. But the great thing about the 2-hour training sessions is that there's lots of time for attendees to practice using the cards, to practice using the wallet cards and putting the stickers on and seeing, and I guess getting that real sense of how can I use this in my job if I'm applying for a DBO, for example, and mapping out the cards on the table, telling the story and working with other people in the room, basically to learn how to use the cards. So it's really practical training, and we do encourage you, if you haven't had any exposure to Blurred Borders before, to consider signing up for the training session. And all organisations, we give 1 free kit to each organisation that attends training, just for 1, unfortunately, but definitely recommend you register for one of the training sessions, and we'll tell you how to do that at the end of this webinar. So at this stage, we thought we'd just show you a bit of an example of the Blurred Borders story cards in use. So this is an example that Ed and Courtney put together at a recent police prosecutions conference that they attended, to do a bit of an overview of Blurred Borders and to show attendees how the cards might be used in different situations. So we might run through that now. So Ed, did you just want to chat through?
Yeah, okay, so the scenario was there's a couple who were in a relationship for 11 months. The event, so you'll see I'm going to use language that talks about using the cards and try and break it into smaller segments. So there was an event. The event was Queensland Police were called because Jack and Jill get into a bad fight, and so they had someone call police. At that time, what things they could do is Queensland Police actually provide them with referrals, Jack and Jill referrals for support to help them with their relationship, because at that stage, it was apparent to the police that they wanted to work through it. It just happened to be a time that they weren't happy with each other. Would you say that?
Yes.
Courtney? Yes. So then what happens is Jill then decides, well, nah, don't want to do it anymore, Jack, and decides to leave Jack. And however, Jack does not want to break up. So the things that Jill can do was Jill actually seeks help to apply and lodge a protection order. And so that's what Jill did as part of this story. And so Jill goes and does, and so so what I did was, can you go back to the other slide?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, all right.
Sorry.
So what we did was we expressed this to the Queensland Police Service, and we gave them the scenario. And this scenario actually comes from me going through, how many forms? Different variations. So, but basically going through different variations of court documents to work out the story of what was happening based on the information that was provided to me. So at this stage, what I said to the Queensland Police Service, I only gave them 5 minutes or less than that. I think someone went over our time, so we had to sneak it all in, didn't we, Courtney? Yes. And so I said to the Queensland Police officers, now the Queensland Police officer, servicing officer has gone. Now that Jill's got a date, and she's got a date to go to court, they've said they've had to then what is that word they use when they go and give the police had to give the order to Jack to tell him he had to be in court. They
have to serve.
They served. Okay, so the Queensland police officer serves the order on Jack. Now, Jack doesn't understand what's going on because all Jack wants to do is still stay in a relationship with Jill, and he didn't know that Jill had lodged this. So he was very confused. And in the scenario, I explained to the police that now you have to pretend to be a Queensland Police Servicing officer, and Jack said, and someone else plays Jack, and you have to now explain, because Jack asked the question, what does this mean? What do I have to do when I come to court? Now, you're probably thinking it's a common thing. Everyone goes, you know, people don't understand what they need to do when they go to court. So it is confusing. So what we did was, you can do the next slide. I asked them to actually put out a DV court order like that. And I told them at the stage that Jack is actually only 17. So for Queensland Police Service, that meant they realised they needed to spend more time to really break it down to the client. And so the people in the room sat down, and it was very interesting because I find people like to play characters when they're in room, don't they, Courtney? And they played the character, and they did this. And for this case, it's very interesting. It's actually about the applicant putting the application in. So yes, there's a police and this is a protection notice, but it's the applicant who has a lawyer, then a prosecutor, and so forth. So I asked them to do this layer. And so that's them telling the story to Jack on what's going to happen when he goes to court and where he will sit and how it would look.
Who's who, essentially, in the process. And like when I've seen these cards in action, you might start by going, okay, Jack, this is you. You're the respondent. Put that card down first. Now let's put down all the other relevant cards around you to map it out. And let's put down where Jill sits in this story, just to, again, tell the picture of the sequence of events that have been happening or what's about to happen next. So the cards can be applied in different ways to tell the story of the person, of what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
And I think by using the cards, we're likely to get better engagement from people as well, because we can demonstrate to them what's coming. And I think that is a lot of anxiety, that causes a lot of anxiety for our clients, is the unknown. So by using these cards and stickers in the pack, we can talk to them in simple terms. It's really helpful.
Yeah, and that's it. I think also what you're saying too, Courtney, is that by displaying it this way, you as the person the Queensland police officer who's had to serve this, has heard the person. So the person who's hearing this and watching you map it out actually feels that you've heard them. And that's the other thing too, I feel, is they feel they're being heard, so they can then understand it better. Because everyone asks questions, and you can always ask questions, but sometimes unless you can show it and you show the storyline to them, they actually understand it. So I think that's a really valid point too, is that making sure someone understands it. So in this scenario too is then, this is just the first layer I made them do. The second thing I did was then talk about what happened once they went to court. Now, when they went to court, there was a domestic violence order placed on Jack, and he had conditions he had to meet. And I'm not showing you that part of the activity in this scenario right now, but when I did do the activity with the Queensland Police Service, what we wanted to really hone on was Jack's 17, Jill is 16, and she's 13 weeks pregnant. So that changes the scenario again when it comes to the court document, because then it meant they had to spend a little bit more time going through the process because of their age. And so we wanted to bring Jack and Jill's scenario up as a conversation. So this just shows that when we're doing an information session, yeah, I can give you a very broad overview, but to make it more sensible for yourself as an individual or organization who wants me to come and do an information session, I'm going to ask you, where do you sit within the structure so that we can talk to you and localize it to suit yourself? Which, Neil, you and I had a conversation about that for yours, didn't we?
Yeah, so recently I did a presentation to some local school guidance counsellors here across Townsville. So their knowledge of the court process was not as high as mine, obviously. And I did a similar activity where I had, I think I might have even used this screenshot, and I put together, I think 9 out of all of these cards, and I handed them around the room, and I just said, okay, if you can read off the plain language on the back for me, and the rest of the room will have a go at guessing which card is which. So I find that, you know, using it as a conversation piece is very important too.
Yeah.
I think it also helps people to remember what's going on in their life because court's so stressful, and it usually means that there's been a stressful event that has happened. And I think by using colour and really simple language, it helps people to understand what's coming next again.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that, like right now you're seeing on the screen that the picture side of the cards, but on the reverse side, there's some plain language information that might be a description, for example, of who a prosecutor is. That's just a prompt for you. If you want to share some information, you don't have to follow it word for word. It's just a prompt for you, particularly for those non-lawyers of us out there, to give a legally accurate description of what a prosecutor is, or what a police protection notice is, for example. It's a prompt for you, just some information about what's on the card. So it's just a guide.
And I think that's the thing too, is it's a visual. So the reason why the story cards work is there's a picture and there's a visual or something, and the visual image kind of explains itself in some ways. And then if you actually can't read or write, it has wording underneath it, but then when you flip it over, it helps to actually provide them with plain language example, which is what we talked about before, which is what we go through in the training. First off, we just get you used to the visual component of it. Then we start getting you to start looking at the plain language component of it when breaking down a story. So that's why training is really valid, because it helps along. So yeah, you can go to the next slide because we're talking about lessons learned now. So you can go next one. I just put that in there. So one of the things that through the consultation that we before we did the training and started mapping out the training, and I must say right now, I'd like to do a shout out to John DeBlanca. John DeBlanca was a trainer who we employed to help us with the training. Now, John was actually part of the Northern Territory, Western Australia Blurred Border project originally, and so a lot of the stuff I talk to and explain is because I spent 9 long weeks, just in case you're watching, John, because you said you were going to, with John going around Queensland, and in those training sessions and 4 hours in a training room, it helped me understand and really get the gist of what Blurred Borders is about. So everyone kind of says, oh, Ev's the expert. No, I'm not really. I just learned as I went along. But what we do as part of the lessons learned is when we're in consultation, we kept getting comments like, yeah, but I don't have enough time. Are you really dumbing it down? I mean, this doesn't, you know, and we had about 12 or 24 little points that people were actually questioning us and saying, and it was coming through a lot consistently through the feedback, some of the themes. And so what we decided was we looked at those themes as part of our training before we developed the training, and some of the learned lessons that John brought in from the Northern Territory, Western Australia. And we decided to give it a best practice guidelines, and which is what we actually go through as part of the training.
Yes.
And the best practice guideline is really about using your local context. And so by doing that, we also talk about how you apply it to your local context. So for example, it's Courtney. Courtney, her local context is when she's talking with clients to talk to a legal issue. My local context would be just providing legal information and explaining how you navigate the legal system by breaking down a story. Education counsellor, their conversations were very different again, weren't they? Would you say, Neil? They were interested in understanding.
Absolutely. They have a different perspective on it, coming from a non-legal background. So they were very excited. I think the health and feeling cards they thought resonated a lot with their young people. So you can see the way that it's a very diverse toolkit to use and have in your back pocket.
Yeah, Yeah, thanks, Neil. And because see, so then we looked at the 3 principles, and so we one of the things that's come out lately is what's that program in the trauma informed?
The With You Trauma Informed.
Yes.
Is that what you're
Yes, the With You Trauma Informed Toolkit, which is a legal toolkit.
Yes.
Again, they actually indicated as part of their research that Blurred Borders is coming from a trauma informed approach.
Yes.
And so we thought it was really interesting because we had actually come up with these 3 points before they actually brought that out.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also because we had John in the room expressing how he's been trying to go out and when he was doing it in the Northern Territory. And one of it was putting people first. That's the first thing, and you're a community person first, so they understand, which is what you were talking about before, Courtney, and how it's lawyers, but also how it's the individual.
Yeah.
They're mapping out their story, which is what that layout is about, and then using it in the plain language communication. Now, plain language communication means breaking things down into smaller segments so that then people can absorb it, because the legal system is very complex as it is, and your clients are already at that point where they're feeling nervous. They don't know what's happening. They feel like they have no control of the situation. So by breaking it into smaller components, you're giving your clients the opportunity to absorb it, to then make really appropriate decisions on how they want to move forward. Would you say that, Courtney?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we brought up the best practice guidelines. Is there another slide there that I have? No. Okay. So one of the other things I also find is when I do information sessions, I get a lot of people come up to me, and I had a really interesting one lately, and that was someone came up to me and said, oh, your applicant form is incorrect. Your applicant card is incorrect. And I'm like, oh, okay. And because one of the things I do say is I want feedback, because as you can see, our training was all based on the consultation stuff we received, and we took it into practice and we applied it. So I always ask for feedback. So this person came up to me and said, your applicant card is missing. It's missing police. So if you can try and scroll back to that layout. So for example, in that layout that I showed you before, if it's not the person who is the applicant, the person is still the applicant, but let's say the police are applying for the protection order on behalf of the applicant or the aggrieved. Is that the language we use? Yes.
Yes.
So I said to the police at the time, and I generally do this, so I like to throw little wobblies in there. I said, so now that you've done it as Queensland Police as an applicant applying for it, show me if it's yourself applying for it as Queensland Police. How does that layout change? Now, the reason why I explain this way is because when the person said to me, you forgot to add police as an applicant. Now, police aren't always an applicant, but this is storytelling. So what that means is this layout would change, and how it would change is you'd still have the applicant, but it'd be the police will be sitting with the applicant. It'd be the police who are actually the ones who are putting the application in on behalf of the aggrieved. And so the mapping only changes by a couple of cards. So instead of having police as applicant on the back of a card in plain language, because it's not always the way it is, you would just add the police and the applicant card together, and then have something else down below as the person with their name. So
there's all the things you learn in training.
Yes, these are all the things. So you know, so we really like the idea of getting feedback, but it really shows me also, I can tell you, and I can tell you what this means, but you don't conceptualize it until you sit in the room with me and I go through stuff with you.
Yeah.
I might provide my.
Yeah, that would be great.
So I am a child protection lawyer. I work lots with child safety, and I act for parents and kids who are involved in the child protection system. But one of the ways that I've been able to utilise these stickers in particularly is with young clients who are, they might be a child or they might be 18 or 19, say, in a family group meeting. So that's a meeting that happens with child safety. And I would get the stickers out for the young person, and I'd have them on the table, and they would put the sticker on a piece of paper as we were talking in the meeting. So it helped the young person to understand child safety's concerns, but it also kept the young person busy because she has ADHD and loves doing anything with her hands. Like anytime I would meet with her, I would always have to bring something for her to fiddle with, or she'd have to eat some food or something. So that was my way of keeping her busy and occupied while we had this meeting. Anyway, so it was a really good outcome after the meeting, because she was thrilled with this sheet of paper that had all the stickers on it, and she understood it, and she was going to show all of her friends about this cool piece of paper she had with stickers. So I think that it's a really good way to use both the stickers and the cards are really good to use, particularly with young people, is what I have personally found.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the kit, there's like a set of wallet cards, and the idea is that you can, and we can get them out if you want, Ed, but then you select stickers to show what the conditions are that the client needs to follow. Like, for example, no violence, stay away from this property or place, no contact, like the whole range of stickers, and then you select the stickers that are appropriate for the client. And it's just that visual cue, that visual reminder that they can take away with them. And like, it's probably a good point now just to mention that when these resources were first developed, the idea was that they were culturally appropriate for First Nations people, but you can use them with any clients who would benefit from having visual cues to help explain a legal problem. So we think, for example, young people, people from different cultural backgrounds, people with cognitive disabilities, people with English as a second language. Like, it's quite a diverse group. So it's anyone you think that could benefit from those visual cues and telling the story of what's happening could use this kit. I mean, right now, a lot of our training has focused on targeting First Nations organisations, community justice groups, different organisations in the community, but we are definitely hoping to roll out further training to all different sectors, because we just see there's such a broad application of this. And I will also mention, I guess, at this point, that right now we have the two kits. We've got the family violence kit, the bail and criminal process kit. We're hoping, like WA and NT down the track, to develop more kits on different topics like child protection. Like, I know you're adapting your child protection from this existing materials, but like the goal is hopefully down the track to produce more kits targeting different legal areas, as Northern Territory and WA have done. So that's what we're working towards, but we're still in the very much in the early stages. We're still just getting the word out there about what this product is and doing those initial training sessions, but we hope down the track. And we'd be keen for suggestions if you have any on what sort of legal topics you think would be great to have a kit focused on. So
and I think Neil, that when it comes to the youth component, you've utilised it in some way. It may not have been the Queensland kit, I can't remember, but it was at the time when you were doing a scenario with helping out as part of your role in Townsville. Is that right?
Yeah, I took the kit, I think it was the old kit, out to Cleveland Youth Detention Centre with myself. Had a young person whose literacy and numeracy levels were really low, so we had some capacity concerns there for the young person. And before that, I guess, conference, we had gone through and attempted to take instructions, and we just couldn't because of the young person's understanding of what guilty and not guilty meant. And so I had prepared a little pack out of the criminal and bail process kit, took that out with me, and I laid out a little bit of a story, but I let him pick cards that he knew he understood the meanings of. So one of them was, questioning from police. The other one was, I think it's custody or something along those lines, because he knew he was in Cleveland, and he left off the not guilty and the guilty and probation and conditions and orders and everything like that. So I got to really, I guess, see in a practical space what his understanding of the situation was. So that was about a hour and a half, nearly 2 hour conference, which usually they don't take that long. And by the end of it, he was able to tell me, what he was pleading not guilty to, what was going to happen potentially the next day at court. So I've seen it, using it from an administrative perspective, which is a lot of my perspective with using the kit. I've seen how it can, in the space of an hour or two, completely change a young person's understanding of their situation.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I think we can give you information, and people generally can take information, and you can learn all about Blurred Borders on our website, which is what we'll go through next soon. But the thing is, until you really understand what we mean by storytelling, and I've talked about it, but I actually find when I do information sessions, when people come up and ask me questions, I can actually understand that they don't really understand what I mean by storytelling. So I know it sounds like we're selling, come to training, but it's about conceptualizing it. And I think people find it interesting. And when it comes to the sticker stuff, Courtney, I was smiling to myself because I can tell you, even adults love playing with stickers. Because when I do training, it's the one thing, it's like right at the end of the session, and that 4-hour session we did, and it was like, can you go now? No, we need to just play with stickers more. It's like, yeah, no. And because I give court documents, that I've de-identified and so forth, and they get to try and really explain a court document in plain language, which is really hard to do. It's not, it's fun, but it really explains how the legal system do use very
jargonistic
language. Legalistic language, yes. That's it.
Yes, lots of jargon.
Yeah, lots of jargon,
Where were we?
So we're up to this one, resources. So we have a website.
We do. So if you go to the Legal Aid website and type in Blurred Borders in the search bar, it'll bring up the Blurred Borders section of the page. And basically, there's just heaps of useful information about Blurred Borders on there. What it is, what's included in a kit, register for training, reordering the kit or ordering for the first time. And so this is where I want to point out, you do go to our website if you want to order the kit. It's purely on a cost recovery basis. I think they're about roughly $100 each.
Yes.
But come to training and you get one free kit per organisation. But you can opt to reorder just the stickers or just a pack of wallet cards, or you might want a second set of story cards for your organisation. So they can all be ordered through our website. But I do want to point out, we've also got everything available online electronically. So if you want to download copies, print your own, we've seen examples from WA, like they've downloaded electronic copies of all the story cards, and they make little picture stories for clients to help explain, I'm your lawyer, this is what's happening, this is what's going to happen in court tomorrow, just to give another visual example of how you can use the kit. So you can download everything. There's also a template on there if you want to print the stickers out yourself. I hear it's a bit tricky, but if you're good at that kind of thing, please feel free to use that template. But yeah, you can also just reorder the stickers, reorder the wallet cards, and reorder the story cards as well.
Yeah. And then we also have, of course, you can contact the CLE at legalaid.qld.gov.au.
I'll put that in the email.
So email address, and we can respond to you back with that. We also have a LinkedIn group, community group. So generally when you come to training, it's mostly people who come to training who are only in the LinkedIn group. So we do try to make that a closed group at first, because it's just about, we want to hear from you if you are using Blurred Borders and you are using it in a different manner. We'd love to hear it so that we can share it amongst everyone, because I think the resource only will work if it be a usable resource if people tell us how they use it and explain what they're doing, because I think it's great. Like, for example, I went to an information session and someone said to me, yes, I've seen the court layout process up on a big poster, and I'm like, oh, we haven't done a poster for court layout. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh, okay. So what it showed me is that people are doing it themselves and making it up, and that's great. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah,
so
that's your perfect argument for your service and the need of your role. So that's great.
That's right. As we say, we want you to localize it to your area. We are giving you just an overview right now, and when we do training, we hopefully try and narrow it a little bit more so you can understand what we mean by storytelling and break it into small segments. But and then we have the CLE update.
What I was just going to mention as well about the website is as the Blurred Borders project matures and we do more training, we're hearing about different card layouts. People are wanting to know, like, I've got to explain this process to my client. How would I use the cards to lay this out? So we're keeping a library essentially of all these requests coming in, and we're going to start putting some of these common card layouts on our website. So you've got all these resources on there that you can go to, look at, download, you know, just to help you put it together quickly. And I mean, some people print out those layouts and carry them in folders and have the relevant cards ready to go, so they can quickly apply it in a busy, time-poor session with a client, so they can quickly get to the point of showing the story they want to tell. We're also hoping to create some more videos just to, again, showcase different elements of the resources. So all these things are in production and in planning. So essentially, watch this space. If you join our mailing list, we'll tell you when these new things are being released. And like if we do produce a new iteration of the kit, we'll share it with our mailing list. So I'd encourage you to sign up for that, and I'll include the details of how to do that in the email you'll be sent after this webinar with a link to the recording. So watch out for that.
Well, and we're looking at training in July for Brisbane. I'm also looking at training in Mount Isa. And I'm working with the Mount Isa team, a team of community organisations who are wanting to do training there. So we're talking together and we're mapping out a week in Mount Isa. So we have sent out emails to people who are interested in going to training and asking them to tell us where they are and where they would like training, and so that we can then see what numbers we're getting, and then we can work out a date to come out to those areas and do those trainings. So yeah, you'll probably hear from us. Well, some people probably have already heard from us, but from this email, we'll also incorporate that for you to actually send an email to us to say you would like training.
And we're very fortunate because we have like Neil in Townsville, we have Anthony in Cairns, we have Sue in Rocky, and so all these staff members, actually First Nation staff members, and they are champions of Blurred Borders and are sort of our local contacts, and sharing information about the kit locally, answering any questions, and we'll be participating in some training as well. So we're really happy to have this network of staff around the state who can be a go-to point if you have questions about Blurred Borders or want to see a demonstration or want to attend training. So yeah, we are hoping that our training can extend more broadly across the state in future, but right now we're sort of focused on those key areas, but we'll travel as when we've got the numbers. And because that, the one thing Neil and Sue and Anthony know, one thing I put in is because of within the best practice guidelines we're talking about localizing it. Well, I also believe in localizing it from a facilitator point of view. Have someone from your area train you in it, rather than this black duck coming up to visit you is blurred already and needs and it's quite happy not to travel. But I will travel if I have to. So yeah, it's all about practicing that. Localizing it means you talk to someone local who understands your community at least. Like in Townsville, they're a different community. In Cairns, in the Cape York. And I'm very lucky to have the three facilitators, and call us the crew, and talk about where we're going and what we're doing, just to help out, because just like we said before, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities are diverse, but they're also very diverse when it comes to our local areas too. So having that local context helps, but also it means people feel comfortable, because you do see this more as people do see it, because it comes from the Northern Territory, Western Australia, as an Aboriginal product only, but it's only been designed that way to help to communicate. It actually has been diversified across called communities. In my consultation phase, I forgot I had someone from, and I was just remembering it now, I had someone from rental, Queensland rentals, Queensland, like tenancy,
and Queensland tenancy, and they're like, how can we use this kits to do what we want to do, and how can we develop something like this for when we're dealing with people too? So it is a resource that can be utilised everywhere. The fact that we call it a Blurred Borders Queensland legal communication kit is because it's purely around the context of legal. It is a communication tool through and through. That's what it is. It's about you being able to communicate in a manner to break down conversations into smaller bites for people to understand and navigate our legal system.
I'll just really briefly mention, so on the screen it says CLE update. That's our community legal education update. That's just a newsletter we send a couple of times a year, sharing information about upcoming webinars, new publications, fact sheets, videos, for example, that Legal Aid has released, upcoming Blurred Borders training or new resources. So if you're interested to join that mailing list, I'll put the link to that as well in that email that you'll get after this live webinar.
So Neil, do you have anything you want to add that you feel?
No, I think we've ticked off a lot of boxes there.
Yeah, we have. What about you, Courtney?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I was just going to mention some of the feedback we got. I think it was in the liaison stage, was like people like, you know, is it condescending to use picture cards? Like, how do I introduce this into a conversation without people feeling like I'm being condescending? And well, one of the tips I heard, and you guys can share what you heard, was like, as the lawyer or the social worker, I would say something like, so I've got these picture cards and I'd like to use them to help me explain the legal issue to you. Would you be okay with that? Like, that was just one example.
Yeah, I always get consent to start
Yeah.
using them before I start using them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the other point with training too, is until you familiarize yourself with everything that's inside the resource, you won't know how to introduce it.
Yeah.
It's purely that in a nutshell.
Yeah.
You can see it, you can read it, but until you come to training, and I actually had some first year law students who were about to come out of law as part of a Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander legal clinic they were doing as part of their final year of law, sorry. I had them in the room, and there was a person in the room. He said, yes, I've read about it, I've looked at the website, I've seen everything, I've done it, and I've seen this, and I've seen that. I was like, okay, cool. I'm still going to go through the session with you so you can understand it. And I went through a very small CLE activity in the book, and then I finished up and we left the session. And this person actually comes up as part of their checkout, because I do a check-in and check-out. As part of their checkout, they said, it wasn't until we did this that I actually understood and was able to conceptualize this into how I could utilize it, because the website's not going to teach you how to use it. You're going to have to come to training and familiarize and spend that time to do it, so you can familiarize yourself with the kits, but with the resources inside the kit, and understand there's a lot of information here that you could use.
Yeah. So I will just remind you at this point, if you do have any questions for us, pop them in the question box on your screen. We've got about 5 minutes before the end of the webinar, so while I'll give you a chance to just write any questions you might have that I can ask our speakers, but while you're doing that, I'll just click through the remaining slides. So essentially, sorry, just clicking through, just sharing some contact details for Legal Aid on the screen now. So the first number there is our standard 1300 number for anyone seeking legal information. That's the best number to call. We also have a priority phone line for First Nations people. That's our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander information line. Those calls are answered as a priority in our call queue, so please get clients to call that number. The third number there is if you've already submitted an application for legal aid, so that's to check on the progress of that application. Our website has heaps of free legal information publications that you can download, print, or order for free, and they'll be delivered to you for free as well. So we've got a huge catalogue of something like 80 publications. That's just a very small sample. I encourage you to get on there and find ones that are relevant for your organisation and download those and have them in stock. There's also lots of free legal information about common legal problems on our website as well. Heaps of information that I know lots of workers just print out to give as a handout to clients. So please make use of those resources as well. Just clicking through. Our next webinar in July, I don't have the registration link ready yet, but it is going to be on the family law amendments, and that will be on the 16th of July. So if you can just watch out for that, we'll be promoting that through all our usual channels. It'll be another free webinar, and I'll be joined by Marianne Huth from our family law team for that one. And our August webinar is going to be on applying for legal aid and navigating all our processes. So that's another really popular topic, so keep an eye out for that one. All our webinars are captioned. We upload those to our YouTube channel. They're all there available for free. There's like a couple of years worth, so please feel free to go and watch those recordings. To hear about our webinars, you can follow us on social media. You can join our mailing list. You can join our CLE webinar mailing list. So, sorry, I've just gone We've just lost our PowerPoint.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry everybody.
Just give me
You'll
a
probably
second.
see a blue screen. We have
Coming back
technical
up.
issues down this end, but you know, it's going to come back up.
I just have to bring it back up again. This is timed out.
But I've noticed there wasn't any questions anyway, KG. So
No,
once
nothing
you-
has come
So
through.
once you've finished, and I'm really happy with that because that means I've actually said everything I need to say, and you all got it. So this is great. We don't have any questions.
Also, at that point, we might wrap up because we've gone through all today's content. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Apologies that all the slides have disappeared off screen, but we were at the end. If you have any questions, please email them through to our CLE at Legal Aid email address, but please watch out for that email that will give you the link to the live recording. I want to thank Neil, I want to thank Courtney and Ed for making time to be part of today's presentation, and thank you all for joining us. And I'll be definitely including the slides as part of the attachment to your email. So thank you again.
Oh no, wait, there is some questions.
Oh, someone's saying,
Okay.
can you pop up the slide for the phone numbers, please?
Yes.
I'm trying to. The technology is just not being my friend right now. But that will all be included in the attachment that I'll send via email. So, and they're also all available on the contact us section of our website. So that's it. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and all the best and take care.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.